All right. My name is John Duke. I'm on the NOFA board, and I'm very happy that you're all here today to see Dan do his presentation on path to nutrient density. Couple of things before we get going. NOFA Mass would, excuse me, would like to honor the indigenous land stewards who are the original occupants of the land that we are currently living, farming, and residing. Please use this link to find the area that you farm and live and identify the original stewards of those lands. Lastly, we want to call on everyone, especially our white allies and our co-conspirators, to action on a few items to assist BIPOC-led organizations. Those actions are listed on this slide. Also, there are 2 events taking place for Spanish speakers and for BIPOC members. NOFA Mass would like to thank our sponsors for this year's winter conference. And recognize that a lot of these folks are here in our vendors area. So definitely stop by and talk to them about their products and let them know how happy you are that they're supporting NOFA Mass. And lastly, don't forget that we have an auction going on, which will end tonight, I think. It is on an app. There's some pretty cool stuff in there. Usually it goes for under market value. So if you're interested in any of these things, and as far as microbiology is concerned, we've got 4 microbiometer kits in there, which are a useful way to assess the biology that's in your soils, which I think is directly related to nutrition. So you might want to check that out. And with that, I'll introduce Dan, who didn't provide a bio, but
I didn't provide a bio.
You didn't provide a bio, but I made one up.
I'll give a bio.
You can do your own bio?
Oh, you can go for it.
All right, let's see if I'm right. You can test me.
I'm curious what you have to say about it.
So Dan's an organic farmer for 30 years. He grew up in Massachusetts on Many Hands Organic Farm with longtime NOFA Mass parents, Julie Rossin and Jack Kittredge. After traveling all over, he launched the BFA, which is the Bionutrient Food Association, in 2010, and has become one of the leading proponents of nutrient density and the interconnection of soil health, plant health, and human health.
Sounds good.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Dan Kittredge.
We've got a full house here today, so I'm not sure if you want to be engaging this watch, but how many people are online? Sorry.
I'm gonna check that out.
I think that's you. All right.
We've got 6.
Cool. I like to start my presentations with an opportunity for you to ask questions. So, is there anything you have on top, or you would like me to address, or you're curious about? This is an opportunity. Rob?
At some point, give us latest update about your thing that you can flash at the vegetable and have it tell you the nutrient density.
Right.
Yeah. When is it going to be on the cell phone?
When's it going to be on a cell phone?
Because that was your goal, right?
That's still the objective.
Yeah.
I got to talk to Apple and Samsung. I'm making their way up from that, but haven't gotten there yet. So yes, okay. Where is the meter and where will get to?
Yeah, that was mine too, Dan. And also, you know, can you share your observation skills, or is it your taste skills, and helping to realize what a good Brix level is, even without using the meter in your studies?
The real objective is to discern directly, but not to have an externalization.
Like cows, right? How they go all over the place for the right thing.
Theoretically, we're still animals, and animals have instincts. So it's not like we can't use them. We just have to be trained to. So yeah, direct perception. Just avoid that. All right. Ready?
I think you'll probably be in the middle of the session.
Okay. Feel free to sit here and seconds like, oh, yeah, not yet. Anybody else? Nope. All right. Nothing on the internet?
I asked if folks
I'll
can,
out the audience.
yeah,
Okay. Anybody who's on, where you guys are over here,
if you're on Zoom and you want to chime in, just take yourself on mute and give a holler,
or type in a question.
or type in a question and I'm checking the chat.
Cool. All right, so I'll just get started. My name is Dan Kittredge. I'm the executive director of the Bionutrient Food Association. As John said, I grew up on an organic farm here in Central Mass, and my parents were active in Norfolk for 30+ years, so I definitely come from this community. When I got married after having been a farm in the summer in my 20s and sort of traveled in the winter, I found no better lifestyle than farming. I thought for raising a family, setting, and so set about trying to do that for a living, and rapidly realized that like my parents didn't have the skills to make a living farming. Idea that it's hard to make a living farming. Have you ever heard of it before? No? Some people say it's
That it's hard living?
hard to make a living.
Yeah, I know.
farming. I don't think it's that hard. Hard to make a living, depending on what your needs are, expectations are. So anyway, when I started looking into it more deeply and going to conferences and reading books and attending seminars and things like that, I began to shift my practices a little bit in a way that from retrospect I would say caused the bottom of the food chain to function more well. When the microbiome at the bottom of the food chain is flourishing, then the plants at the middle of the food chain are more likely to flourish than the top of the food chain. You could argue the humans are going to flourish. When the soil is in a dynamic where the plants are not doing particularly well, they're more likely to be succumbing to insect pressure and disease pressure. If that happens, you don't harvest so many crops and you have a hard time making a living. So from a practical standpoint, the selfish thing to do as a farmer is to create a reality where life is functioning more well because it's easier to make a living. And that's basically what I came to. And it seemed like there were a bunch of things sort of intertwined with this. Pest and disease resistance connects to increased flavor and aroma and nutrient levels and shelf life and better carbon sequestration and we would argue potentially better human health effects. Founded the Bionutrient Food Association in 2010 as an educational organization whose mission was to increase quality in the food supply. And by quality, we mean flavor, aroma, nutritive value. It's assumed by many communities, organic or biodynamic or permaculture or agroecology or regenerative, that their food is superior to what's conventionally commercially available. But it's not really necessarily assessed. There's a sort of general assumption that's part of the ecosystem that this is why we're doing it, or one of the benefits of what we're doing. But it's not actually directly, confirmed or determined. And so we set up the Bionutrient Food Association as an educational organization to focus on the specific thing, the quality of the food, as the objective. And so after doing a lot of courses, workshops, conferences, and things to the beginning of the 2010s, around 2016, we said, as it had sort of started to spread across the country and around the world, it sure looks like working with life, building the function of the bottom of the food chain, causes plants to be healthier in all ecosystems, different climate zones, different, soil types, different crop types, rains or tropicals or animals, perennials, vegetables. Like it really seems like it's applicable across the board. If it's, and also it does seem like you can create a reality where here, because the plants are more biochemically complex or complete, they become indigestible to pests and diseases. You don't need fertilizer or much less. We can really create a dynamic where we're building soil, we're removing toxins from the environment, we're causing food to be more nutritious, which we think would have potentially significantly positive health impacts for humans, which could have, so like, wow, food quality could be a high ground around which a lot of systemic issues could be addressed. That was the sort of concept, and I thought was how do we get food quality to be something that is actually focused upon because, if it's not, it's not a big deal right now, effectively. It's tangential to other things. And so I thought was, can we organize the market around it? Because generally today's culture is focused on money and, cash and profits, and sort of people make decisions based on money. So is there some way we could engage in economic incentive around this question of nutrition equality? And the thought was, if we could give people, anybody who buys food, not that people should buy food, a lot of people do buy food, if we could give people who buy food the ability to directly receive this carrot versus that carrot, if you've got 2 bags of carrots on the shelf, or this piece of steak versus that piece of steak, if you can choose your food based on its inherent nutritional value, which if you do these bag of carrots for 20 out of 100, or 80 out of 100, you've got kids at home, are you going to buy the 20s or the 80s? We think a lot of people buy the 80s instead of 20s. And so that was the general concept. Build the ability for people to test in real time and not have to trust labeling or certifications, etc. People maybe versed in the dynamics of the organic certification system. It's a binary. You either are organic or you're not organic, right? And some organic crops are quite, sort of full of nutritious and impressive from a nutritional standpoint, and some organic crops aren't. They're both certified, but some are superior nutritionally and some are not. Some local crops also may be quite good, and some local crops may not be. So in many cases, it seems like the labels don't conform with nutritional aspects. So anyway, this story starts as far as what we've been doing with the food density in 2016. We basically identified 3 things that we needed to accomplish, sort of proof of concept. For this possibility of the supply chain to be revolutionized around nutrition. One was we need to actually characterize the variation in nutrient levels in food. So people may have had the experience of a carrot of a garden or a market that tastes quite amazing, and you may have the experience of a carrot in the grocery store that doesn't. Anybody ever had that? Even sometimes certified organic carrots in the grocery store that really don't quite not appealing to you as your animal, as an instinct, right? Not not good. So what is that variation? Our thought was that there's a significant nutritional variation between these 2 carrots and other crops. But what is it? Because nobody who's been, quote unquote, scientific looking in this space for decades seems to have done that. No one has characterized the variation in nutrient levels in carrots or cucumbers or spinach or rice or wheat or whatever. So the first thing was to do that, was to characterize the variation. Is there a significant nutritional variation? Can we actually get numbers associated with it? The second thing was to connect those nutrient variations, presuming they were significant, with management practices and soil health outcomes. Our hypothesis is that the more well-functioning the ecosystem is, the more higher nutrient levels are in the crop, and that ecosystem function has to do with how the farmer is managing the land. But there's no data to confirm that, right? So our thought is healthier soil makes health more nutritious food, but where is that data? If no one knows what the variations in nutrients are in food, you can't really calibrate to soil health variations because you don't have a baseline, right? You don't have a metric to connect to. And then the final thing was, can we build a handheld consumer price sensor that you can non-invasively use to flash a light at carrots or cucumbers or beef or whatever and get readings? Is it possible to build effectively a little rig at consumer price point? So in 2017, we started this project. So 2016 was like conceptual, thinking through it strategically and finding partners and stuff like that. 2017, we started work on the first meter. And this is the second generation of it, but we were able to, in 2017, build a open source handheld consumer price flash and light meter that you could flash and light at the carrot and get a. In this case, what would come back was a spectral signature. So it looked like this, which doesn't mean anything, right? This is 360 nanometers, and that's 940 nanometers. But it's just a spectral signature. It can't be converted into a good carrot, bad carrot, 20%, about 80%. So step one, can you build an open source Intel priced meter? Yes. Okay, good. Step two, 2018, we built our first lab in Michigan, and we had growers send in crops, not just growers, consumers. People went to grocery stores, went to farmers markets from their own farms, from their own gardens, sent in carrots and spinach. We started with carrots and spinach as the first two crops. We only assessed for about 15 elements and 2 compounds. So calcium and potassium and sulfur and phosphorus and polyphenols and antioxidants. There's about 150, 130, 140, depending on which crop it is, nutrients that the USDA measures when they measure a carrot or a cucumber, about 150 different elements and compounds. There's about 100,000 compounds in food that have been written about in published papers in the scientific literature. So there's 150 compounds the USDA looks at. There's 100,000 compounds that are published upon in literature. And when people do the deep metabolomics, it looks like there's about 10 million compounds in food. So we were only looking at 15 elements and 2 compounds. So this is not a complete assessment of carrot and spinach, but it was something. And what we were able to find in that first year was that the variations were quite significant. If it was a carrot, it was calcium. Maybe it was this carrot had much calcium as these 3 carrots, right? 400 grams of carrot. This compared to carrots, compared to smaller, 3 to 1 variation in calcium. If it was spinach, it was more like 15 to 1. So this leaf of spinach has as much iron in it as these 15 leaves of spinach. So 15 to 1, that's not small, right? That counts as variation. When we look at polyphenols, antioxidants, which are these sort of more complex flavor nutritional compounds, it was more like 50 to 1 or 200 to 1. So literally this leaf of spinach would have as many antioxidants as those 200 leaves of spinach. This carrot would have as many polyphenols as those 50 carrots. So very significant variations we found. That was 2018. In 2019, we built our second lab in California at Chico State University, and we worked with 6 crops that year. We added spinach and kale and cherry tomatoes and grapes. We had more fruits. We already had root, more leaves. And we started to work with farmers to ask them to send in the soil that the crops grew in. So pull 3 carrots from your soil, and then take the soil, the top 10 centimeters and next 10 centimeters of soil underneath them each. So we can overlay the soil dynamics with the crop dynamics. And also we asked them to answer a big long series of questions like, when did you plant? Did you till? If so, with what? How many passes? What was the seed? What was the variety? Where did you purchase it? Did you cover crop? What was your fertilizer? Did you irrigate? Did you side dress? They're all numbers of management data, because we want to understand what are the environmental conditions that connect with the soil metrics that connect with the nutrient variations. Because foundationally, we're farmers, and our objective is to empower farmers to do a better job. We don't want farmers to be picking their carrots and bringing them to market, and somebody says, actually, I don't want your carrots because they're junky. Right? We want carrots. The farmers will understand how they can modulate practices proactively. They harvest the process of food. So that was 20. And then 2020 was our 3rd lab in France, and got up to a little over 20 crops we assessed. Over 200 farms were sending in samples of crop and soil and management data. And with every single time a crop or the soil came in, we'd flash a light at this meter. So we take a picture, inspect the signature, and then we run it through the lab to get the calcium level, the potassium level, the antioxidant level. And so by the end of the 2020 data year, which basically meant the middle of 2021, we were able to say we had completed our proof of concept. We had shown that nutrient variations were significant. The variations I was telling you about with carrots and spinach, those the first 2 crops. After looking at more than 20 crops, those same variations maintain themselves across the board. It's like 2x, 5x, 10x, 50x, depending on the nutrient compound. Again, we're only looking at 15 or 20 different things. We're not looking at 150 or 10,000. But for the nutrients we're looking at, it does seem that there is quite significant nutrient variation in the crops. And we were able to say that, yes, you don't till, I think with wheat and oats, it was most quite obvious. the average scale of the wheat and oat farms you were working with for about 3,000 acres. So, big operations, and the direct connection between tillage depth, organic matter, and nutrient levels. For instance, just as one metric. So if you don't till, your average organic matter level is here, and average nutrient levels are here. If you till shallowly, your organic matter is here, and your nutrient levels are here. If you till deeply, organic matter is here, nutrient levels are here. So that measure practices, soil metrics, and nutrient levels. So yeah, that was the end of 2021, where we basically said, okay, proof of concept complete. It does look like these things are all true. The nutrient variations are significant. You can build a handheld calibrated consumer instrument, consumer price instrument, and it does take your soil health and management practices. So great. Now let's do the job. And so that started in the end of 2021. We started working on what we call nutrient density as opposed to nutrient variation. So with nutrient variation, with these elements and compounds I'm just referring to, it was like, what's the top to bottom on calcium? What's the top to bottom on potassium? What's the top to bottom on polyphenols? It wasn't what's a better care, a decent care, and a worse care. So that's what we're trying to do now, is trying to actually be able to say from a complete complex perspective, this steak is optimal, this steak is decent, and this steak is actually quite poor. So we started that work in 2021 at the end of the year, called our beef project. And so that's what we're completing right now, and then we will be moving on to other crops. The target is about 750 steaks from we have 4 or 5 continents right now. People are sending samples from. So every farm sends in 3 steaks from each of their 3 different animals on their farm, and they send in the manure from those animals for a microbiome assay, and they send in the forage and the soil, and then give us the management.
When you talk about evaluating beef, it immediately reminds me of Rich Shin, and I just
Yes.
wonder if any of the farms that are affiliated with him are participating in your project.
I don't know.
I mean, what his description of what he's doing and his farmers are doing that I heard this
Yeah.
summer sounded really in tune with what you're doing, and I would think that he's
100%.
like, want to be on the same wagon.
Actually, I don't have the names of all the farmers who have participated.
Oh, so coincidentally, some of them may be involved, but you just don't know.
Correct. We're talking about hundreds of farms.
Yeah.
And I'm not the person who manages all the intake.
Yeah.
We also have a policy of maintaining sort of autonomy, not autonomy.
Anonymity?
Anonymity. Thank you.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, the idea is, farmers are sending in all the stuff and this data, and one of our promises is no one gets to know who you are. If you get your readings back and you like what they say, then you can say these are my readings and use them for marketing purposes. If you get your readings back and you're kind of embarrassed, then nobody knows except for you.
Yeah.
So our thought is, 2 or 3 years down the pike, there will be meters, there will be assessments. So call it a shot across the bow. Good to know now what other people may know later. But yeah, so I don't know.
Okay.
I can't say.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyway, so what we're doing with the beef is we're looking at about 800 different elements and compounds, which is a lot more than 20. We're looking at enzymes and vitamins and amino acids and lipids and secondary metabolites and minerals, of course. And our thought is, and this is original research because no one's done it before, there hasn't yet to be a definition of nutrient density in a food saying this is a better carrot, this is a worse carrot. That has not been done by anybody. So our thought is, let's get a bunch of these different compounds that are understood to be human nutritionally relevant, assess them on hundreds of different, samples from that one different crop, and then begin to look at patterns. Can we see these omega-6, omega-3 ratios? People maybe know about omega-3, omega-6 ratios. That's one of the things that people do know about when it comes to animal products and beef, as an example. We usually want it to be more like 1-to-1 or maybe 2-to-1, omega-6, omega-3. In many cases, it'll be 8-to-1 or 10-to-1 or 30-to-1. American Heart Association says anything over 4-to-1 is bad for you. Right? So your grass-fed beef will oftentimes be more like 6 or 8 or 10-to-1. Not your corn-fed beef. Your corn-fed beef will be more like 8 or so, 8-to-1 or so. And a good grass-fed is more like 1-to-1. So that's just one ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. But if you look at all these things, people know about soil tests, about the phosphorus and zinc ratios and zinc and copper ratios. There's, life seems to work through these, a balance of things. It's not like lots of calcium is great and everything else is ignored. No, there's a balance of all. And so being able to characterize that is effectively what we're trying to do. We did focus on beef because it's the crop with the world's largest economic footprint, as in more dollars spent on beef than anything else, and so probably the world's largest ecological footprint, more acres used in the production of beef than anything else. And so I thought was, if we try to shift the market on a crop based on quality, let's use one that's got a significant footprint. So
Hey, Dan, can you
Yeah.
stand right here so that the folks on Zoom, no, closer to this mic.
closer, they can hear me.
It's a little sketchy.
All right,
Just a little closer. I know you gotta stand next to me.
it's
But
sketchy. Still flashing blue light at me. I'm like, I'm not sure I want to engage. Yeah, so it looks like we'll be publishing our first couple papers on that work in the next sort of around 3 to 6 months. We've been running samples over the past year, and now we're looking to other crops. So now we've got a model in place about how to do it. We're looking, I think almonds, for some random reason, there's a bunch of people interested in almonds. So we're going to sort of bring the money up and start running samples on almonds. It's an expensive process. It's part of why this has not been done before. It's about $1 million a crop to do all the science. So to define nutrient density in beef, $1 million. Maybe once we've done it all and we kind of got an idea about how to do flesh, then pork will be only 750. Okay. And then maybe chicken and lamb will be 500 once we've done it a couple of times. But just to run all the samples, look at all these compounds, to coordinate the process is no small economic feat. So it's a process. We're in the midst of it. And I wanted to sort of have this presentation. I think it's how it was written up in the book, to not only lay out what we've been doing and where we're going, but also to sort of welcome questions and conversations and suggestions and feedback. This is a project that we have been leading at the BFA pretty single-handedly for a number of years. The term nutrient density, for those who've heard of it, is one we basically helped to coin and create about 15 years ago. I feel like we've been ahead of the curve on this topic, and I'm no longer happy to be in that like way out in front position. I don't think it's strategic. It's overwhelming. I would like to sort of create a dynamic where the broader community and movements feels ownership and engagement in this process. We're talking, if you're talking 50 crops around around 50 crops that are the major crops that are sold and eaten, at between 500 and $1 million a pop, that's $35 million. We have a hard time raising $1 million a year, so I don't want to be doing this till I'm 80. We got to figure out a way to broaden the base and engage the community, and facilitate that more deep ownership. So get ready. I'm almost done with my sort of opening remarks, and I'm really looking for people's comments, suggestions, what do you think, concerns, ideas, etc. Finally, I'll just talk about the meter, which I think Bob had asked about. So we have this meter now calibrated for 10 of the crops we have done in the previous sort of nutrient variation protocol. So, if you want to see what the level of polyphenols is in your carrots in relation to other carrots, you can get a reading. If you want to see the level of antioxidants in wheat berries in relation to other wheat berries, you can get a reading. If you want to see the nutrient density of your cucumbers, we can't give you that reading because we don't know. Does that make sense? I think I made that point at the beginning. Until you know what nutrient density is, you can't calibrate an instrument to it. What we have done so far is look at calcium, potassium, phosphorus, and sulfur, polyphenols, and antioxidants. And so we can say high, low on these things. That's a different answer than this is a better carrot, this is a worse carrot. Does everybody get that? So, your answer your question, Bob. Sorry. Yeah. This can do what it can do, but it really can't do, until we know what nutrient density is, nobody can calibrate meters with.
Right.
Which is, why we want to get the science done. Because once the science is done, then we can work on this next piece. To the point about flavor and aroma, I would say that I have talked about this concept of a spectrometer as a shiny object. The shiny object, like something that gets your attention and brings you down the rabbit hole. I'd like my hope is that the rabbit hole ends up with the realization that we actually are wired for very subtle perception on multiple levels with the bodies that we inhabit. And that's actually where the shoe fits. It's not some external piece of kit. It's actually in direct perception. So can you see, can you feel, can you sense? I think we can. I think indigenous peoples from all aspects of the planet have engaged in a very subtle way and have understood how to engage in a very subtle way. I think in this culture, we're not really brought up with those faculties. And so perhaps we are handicapped, you could say. Well, that's not a correct term these days.
Deficient.
Unabled, what would the proper word be for subtly, or not being attuned with our
Cognitively
our
challenged.
subtle senses?
It's
Sensitively unable.
It seems you can, your taste can change. So, like you can learn new tastes. A few years ago, I was sick with a bug that allowed me to eat only rice with nothing on it. And I realized that rice has sugar on it because I was forced to pay attention to had to enjoy it because there was nothing else.
Yeah,
And rice actually is sweet.
can be. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think, there's flavor. The real thing to me is not necessarily the sweetness per se, but the flavor when it comes to the talking of things broadly.
right, but I mean that's a little example.
Yes, exactly. And then also, how do you feel after you eat? Like something may taste good because flavoring agents are put on it or something. Then how do you feel? Logy afterwards, and you feel vibrant afterwards. These aren't really complex things, right? I mean, there are subtle things like can you put your hand over the watermelon and see which one you like, which one feels better? Can you use your subtle facets? That's another level of we can talk about. Or you see the sheen, the energy coming off of things. Like this one's dull, this one's bright. Right? Those are subtle factors, which I think we all are wired with the potential to, have access to, but we haven't necessarily trained those skills in ourselves. But that's a bit tangential to this technological, quote unquote, scientific conversation. So, I think I'll stop right there and see if there's more questions or commentary or engagement.
There's one question on Zoom.
Yeah.
And which is, so are we testing on, I gotta put my glasses on. Phenols too. We've been doing that on grains. It's pretty eye-opening.
Polyphenols and antioxidants are the two compounds that we've been looking at across the board with every crop we looked at. And grains, certainly, we did oats and wheat. And yeah, I mean, it's when we look at those compounds, the phenols and the antioxidants is when we get the 50x or 200x or 300x variation. I think the most pronounced one was, I think it was spinach. And I think it was polyphenols. It was 364.5 to 1, which means if you ate this little spinach on January 1st, you'd have to eat one of these little spinach every day until December 30th to get the same amount of polyphenols. So these are understood to be very health positive things, right? It's not the volume of carrot, it's what's in the carrot. And as you begin to tease it all apart, actually, how something was grown has a powerful impact as to what's in it. I think in many cases, farmers are paid by volume, not by quality. And so that's part of our hope here is to figure out a dynamic where the consumers say, I want stuff that's better for my family. And that goes all the way through the supply chain. Right? If you can choose the carrot is 80 out of 100 over the one that's 20 out of 100 off the shelf, and you tell other people, they start doing it also, and all the 80s leave, the 20s stay. Our thought is the buyers are going to start going back to the ones that are providing the 80s, especially if we're talking to them ahead of time saying what's going on. So, yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry I missed the beginning, and I apologize again if you already covered this, but so I'm hearing that you're looking at nutrient density in a positive way with the tool, and then could the tool also be used for like a negative situation where a brownfield or.
Toxins.
Yeah, toxins, that can you notice other things that are, maybe it has the same capacity, like ability to tell if there's something unhealthy with vegetable.
Yeah, so I'll just use beef as an example because we're doing beef right now. And there are things like inflammation markers or stress hormones or, biochemistry of, pre-diabetic states or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, so how this works through what's called spectroscopy. I didn't say that, but probably worth just a minute. Spectroscopy is a science that's been around for decades. It's how we know what stars are made up of. Anybody ever study astrophysics? Probably not, but you know what people, some people know enough about this to know. Yeah, we know what Alpha Centauri is made up of, and that's only a few light years away. I think we're finding exoplanets that are 50 million light years away that we're able to see. They've got water vapor in their atmosphere.
Where the exoplanet passes in front of its star, you can look at this spectroscope that
Right.
changes and see what the planet's atmosphere is doing to it, so what atmosphere the planet has. It's beautiful.
Right, but how the hell? I mean, most people have this idea that things are things, that copper is a thing, and sulfur is a thing, right? And then so they're like, how the hell do you know what something 50 million light years away is made up of? Because you have to drive, a ship out there and harvest it and then drive it back and assess it. If you're operating with this, everything is a thing concept, but the reality is that copper, we have certain protons and neutrons, but also has a vibration. So everything vibrates foundationally, and so there's a light. Copper vibrates at a certain frequency, which is a certain light. So you can take a picture in that frequency range, you can see what it is. So that's how we can know what it's made up of by not being there, is to this science called spectroscopy. And so that's basically what it is. And so our thought is if we can figure out what something 50 million light years away is made up of with a flash of light, can we figure out something what's a millimeter away is made up of with a flash of light, right? If we can do it in space, we should be able to do it here on terra firma. And so it's not just polyphenols and copper, it's everything. PCB vibrates, diapsin vibrates, glyphosate vibrates. All these things are things in chemistry and vibrations in physics. And so you can absolutely calibrate instrumentation to that. So our thought is,
Just as useful as the. It is.
well, I mean, if you want to think about more broadly about the ecosystem and you've got some sort of point source pollution in your water supply, if you had a spectrometer that was calibrated for toxins in the water, you could basically see where did it come from? Oh, there's where it came from. Or toxins in the atmosphere. If you've got, you're living close to a factory, or, I mean, imagine we could actually, know, quote unquote, scientifically, empirically, what's going on in our environment. We could be actually quite more empowered, I think. A lot of things that are going on in the background, which we don't have the ability to confirm and then act upon. So theoretically, it could be very, very powerful technology. I mean, conceptually, yeah, and that's where we're at right now. It used to be big. The meters used to be big and expensive, and now like smartphones, right? Your smartphone has way more computing power than Apollo 11, right? Like they went to Mars or went to the moon, way more, right? And that was NASA's best, what they could possibly do. And now everybody's got one. So the concept here is like, this used to be NASA stuff, and now it could be Star Trek stuff. Now it could be in your hands. So,
The trick's the database.
well, for food quality, the trick is a database, right? We can't, the building the instruments is not the issue. It's understanding what to calibrate them to. And so that's our issue, is there's this hurdle, this $35 million hurdle we have to go over, which once it's complete, like you define nutrient density in beef once, it's not like you're just doing it for North America, right? Beef is beef across the planet. So you define nutrient density for the planet, and then you do rice for the planet, and then you do oats for the planet. So $35 million is nothing compared to what the implications are. But foundationally, we're committed to it being done open source, as in nobody owns it. And we know about like the Facebook algorithm or the Google algorithm, right? You get these companies that have lots of power, because they have a system that people use, but they control it. You don't necessarily trust it. So our thought is, if we're going to be defining nutrient density, which we think is powerful and important, it must not only be done, it must be done in an honorable way that facilitates collective empowerment, not profit. I'm happy for people to profit on this space after it's been defined, but I think having it be defined in a way that is belongs to no one, belongs to everyone, is foundational strategically for these larger goals to be accomplished. You can imagine Amazon now owning Whole Foods and having an understanding about the fact that what's in Whole Foods is not particularly impressive as far as nutrition is concerned, and perhaps wanted to have a sensor put on their Kindle. I'd like to be able to say the sensor is calibrated improperly and the Kindle shouldn't be trusted. The iPhone, okay, the iPhone, they put one in there, they don't have a vested interest, we'll verify if it's good. Okay, the one that is in the iPhone, great. The one that's in the Pixel, that one works too. Samsung's, that one's good, right? My thought is that we as a small nonprofit are not going to be in the place of building these sensors that are going to be mass produced globally. We're a nonprofit, we're not a big company. So my hope is that these sensors do end up in smartphones. And I think it's entirely plausible for them to. You got 3 or 4 different cameras in the back of their hands. If we understand what the frequency ranges are that we needed to assess nutrient density in beef and rice and milk and cucumbers, there's no reason Apple couldn't start putting them into their smartphones, et cetera, in the future. So, yeah.
Well, I can see why you asked for questions at the beginning, because you can go so many directions. And,
Some people are versed in the topic and some people are not. So, yeah.
Yeah. My questions at the beginning, I'm curious about rock dust and like how that can play into, down the line.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious more about like sourcing and of data and calibration. And can you speak about like your approach? It sounds like you're broadening that approach now and opening it up again, or maybe you have always been, but as you sort of like, are you focused on like individual scale, or is it more of a like group or entire like continent scale? I guess I'm interested in like going about defining nutrient density. Are you looking at the health of the body or the health of like or like you're saying cell faculties, like the senses and how your perception of these like qualities of food go into like the definition of nutrients by nutrient density.
So I think there's a couple questions in there.
Yeah.
Maybe 2,
I'll try
3.
to tease a couple. of them.
20.
I think so as far as human health outcomes are concerned, that's another level of this process. And so that's part of what we're doing in the beef project is feeding people what we think is the good beef, what we think is the bad beef, and then taking a blood sample and a urine sample to see like, oh, what are your inflammation markers? Do they go up or do they go down? So we're doing that right now in the beef project, but there's groups like the Mayo Clinic that are wanting to work with us on cancer and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of, the Cleveland Clinic wants to work with us on autism, feed people this and feed people that and see what gets affected how. So, the problem with this all is the multi-factor system, right? Every one of us is unique. Every one of us has our own DNA, our own microbiology, our own historical dynamics. So you can't say, there's no uniform human. So it's about finding patterns and some, averages of trajectory and things like that. So that's one piece of it. We are looking, with our sampling process, it's been mostly a question of logistics, as in where can you ship to? So getting soil across the border from Canada, good luck, right? It's just a real serious pain in the butt. Crops not going to happen. So we may have 3 labs in the United States, but we can't get any samples from Canada. In Europe, they've got a different political system. So we've got a lab in France that can take in samples from 25 countries. But they can't take anything from ever. So, there's logistics involved, primarily with the shipping. And so we want to get as broad a spectrum of samples as possible. We want different soil types, different fertility programs, different management practices, different cultivars. Our objective is to define the continuum. We want to see what's high and what's low, and we don't want to just get good growers from New England. We actively been working to get a broad base of samples, because that's really, you're define 1 in 100. You have to get samples that are a fair characterization of that. I'm not sure if there's other questions in there. Yeah, I got a couple of them.
Some sort of rock dust.
Oh, yeah.
Rock dust. That's the iguana lecture, which I can delve into if you don't have any more questions. But foundationally, you need a broad suite of different elements for biochemistry to function, for enzymes to exist, for compounds to be built, for life to function. So depending on your soil history and dynamics, in many cases, there are mineral deficiencies that you've got in your soil. So rock dust can be one of a very powerful and very inexpensive way to address those deficiencies.
Thank you. I think you answered my questions.
Okay.
Sure. The one that, I guess I'm curious now about your definition. Like you say, beef is beef, but there's it's the cattle that we have beef makes for fun. But if you look at
Beef is not beef. There's great beef and there's horrible beef.
right.
There's a continuum of everything. That's the whole point. What the cows eat, especially it looks like in the last 60 to 90 days. Basically flesh turns over, it's rebuilt about 1 to 2% per day in the cow.
But to the consumer,
So if you spend your last 100 days eating corn, all of your what your body's built out of is going to be probably different. You spend the last 100 days eating pasture.
I studied ceramics in undergraduate school, and there's a famous potter named Michael Cardew.
Okay.
An English potter. He went to Africa, and he studied ancient in England, and then he went to Africa. And his whole interest was building the whole system in Africa, like studying the geology, making the clay, making the kiln, building all the implements, like everything. And what it taught me was that we think, my perception was for a long time, I grew up in New England, that we think that the rest of the world is so different. But when you look at geology, all the continents have crashed into each other several times. Like we're actually, the coast of Africa is actually very similar to our geology here. Michael Purdue figured that out through the actual ceramic process.
Yeah.
I wonder if a similar thinking would be with this, like, there are obviously different plants that build the soil.
Tomatoes, regardless of where you grow a tomato, there's a certain range of what's in the tomato.
Yeah.
And what our data seems to be showing us right now is that you can do a good job growing tomatoes, say, in a broad suite of different soil types and climate zones. And you can do a bad job in a broad suite of soil types and climate zones. It matters much less where you are on the planet or what your soil type is, and much more about how well your soil is functioning. That's what seems to be the case, which is very hard as far as I'm concerned. It sort of fits with our hypothesis. Other things we found are that in many cases, organic is, exactly nutritionally uniform with conventional. Right, the vast majority of the organic samples we've gotten in are right there at the bottom of the curve with the conventional. Right, you don't see a bump, a nutritional bump in organic. If we're looking at what most people have access to, which is grocery store stuff, which is grown on big farms, maybe in the Southwest, that are not engaging in good soil health practices. So just because you're not using chemicals does not mean you're more nutritious. There's some stuff at farmers markets, which is less nutritious than stuff at general grocery stores. In many cases, Walmart's got a better nutrient level than Whole Foods. But we're finding some really, really interesting stuff that may be going a little bit counter to what people would assume, but maybe not if you thought about it a little bit.
From a nutritional perspective, you might be reducing your chemical exposure by buying an organic product, but nutritionally, it could be the same.
Might be.
Might be.
So I like being the sort of, what's the word? The one who takes the opposite position, the contrarian. Like,
I've got a different word.
antagonist. Is it, I people may have heard of. Anyway, a friend of mine was doing some work with some people up in the, I think it was Montana, and there were farmers that were using cover crops and were using glyphosate to burn down their cover crops, right? They'd spray it, a pint of glyphosate per acre in the spring, and that would kill the cover crops. And then they'd come in there and without any doing any tillage, they would plant their grain, their wheat. And there were organic farmers that were, using tillage, and I don't think they're doing so much of the job with cover crops. They were doing tillage to plant, tillage to cultivate. And same bioregion. And at the end of the season, when the organic crops were harvested, they were rejected for EU import because of their glyphosate residue, even though none had been applied, because 70% of our rain has glyphosate in it. So you cannot apply glyphosate on your fields, but if it's in the ecosystem, it's going to be applied to your fields regardless. Now, the crops that were produced where the glyphosate was added formally were passed and were accepted into the EU with zero glyphosate residue, because the microbiology was functioning so well that it was digested. So you put your 1 pint of glyphosate down into a 6 foot tall, 10 species cover crop mix to kill it, just to kill it, but you've got all that amazing life and vitality functioning in the soil. And that can digest that 1 pint of glyphosate and whatever comes down in the rain.
And maybe hold on to it, not let it go into the atmosphere.
It digests it, breaks it
Right.
down into component parts.
So it keeps
A
it.
few hydrogens, some oxygen, a couple carbons over here, some nitrogens, right? It's all just little elements. Microbes have the magic power of cleaning things up, of digesting toxins. Right? Microbes have these faculties. So just because something is not applied in the last 3 years on an organic operation does not mean that it wasn't applied 20 years previous to that when it wasn't organic and got cleaned up. But a lot of these farms have been converted to organic production right now, the big scale stuff, not the local people around here, but the 98% of the organic vegetables that you'll see in the supermarket shelf and any of the big stores if you travel anywhere around the country, right? The stuff that's on the shelves of the stores is produced on farms that in many cases are doing the absolute minimum to get their organic certification. And were grown in soils that have significant toxin residues that have not been ameliorated. So it sure looks like it's the function of the life that matters, not the labels or the certification, right? That's what I want to say. That's my point. It's the function of the life in the system. That's what determines the overall nutritive level, the toxin load, et cetera. And the subtle management, the sensitive management of the farmer to maximize overall system function is really what's, I think is going to be proving to produce the highest nutrient density in crops. And we know about tillage, we know about how that affects the microbiology. So most of the organic grain in this country has its weed pressure managed through tillage. If you're going out there, you're tilling your fields every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, you're having significant negative impacts on the microbiome. So every community needs to be humble about where their shortcomings are and what they can learn, how they can learn and how they can improve. Permaculturalists are full of themselves for various topics. The by the net people know they're better. Regenerative, regenerative of course is the answer. And organic has always been right?
Don't forget soil food web.
So, don't forget soil food web, yes. Agroecology, conventional, right? IPM. We've got all these isms, all these sort of dogmas, all these.
And green natural farming.
KNF, oh God, don't forget the KNFers. Yeah. right? I would say there's insight in all those communities, but it's really about the function of life. And that's the objective, is the function of life, not the tribal, religious, dogmatic, us, them, superiority thing, which in many cases is what occurs. So, all right, that was a rant.
That dogma can also be true with the tillage.
100%.
No tillage have multiple things that are detrimental to the soil life.
100%. Especially if the soil is really tight and there's not, I mean, if there's no air, life's not gonna function. So all things in moderation. Yeah, and life functioning more well is the foundational objective. I would say.
Given that people who have a lot of power usually don't like to give it up, I'm imagining a point at which you have all this, you collected all this data, you've done the science, you know that the science is good and that your conclusions are good, and you turn it into this way of measuring nutrients in food, and it gets out there. And some people who have a lot of money and who have a lot to lose by having people discover that they're in the 20 category of their
Yeah.
carrots or whatever it is, they're gonna try with all their might to come up with an argument that your science is wrong. And this has happened before, right? Like with Roundup and any number of things. So, and all that science from before 1940 that we forgot about. So are you already developing a strategy for how people will believe you, even if powerful forces come out and say, Dan is full of it? Right?
I think, yeah, the system is pretty powerful, and if they want to destroy you, or your character, or your reputation, or anything like that, then they can, I mean, yeah, it's a worthy adversary. Part of our strategy in doing this open source in the commons is to make it so it can't be locked up. It can't be controlled. If it's out, if every single thing we do is out and available, then it can't, at least it can't be hidden. Right? That happens with some nice inventions and patents and things like that. Somebody comes along with a free energy device or whatever, that's, well, companies don't like those. So those get locked up. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of things that have been done. People have inventions and things like that that could powerfully change the world for the better, that threaten vested interests that have been, one way or another, not allowed to come forward because it was controlled. It was a patent. It was only one person had access to it. And so foundational to our work is that this all be done openly. And so, you can take one person out or 10 people out, but the science is still there. So that's the first level of defense or offense, is to ensure that it belongs to no one and can't be locked up. Secondarily to that, I think the success comes from the bottom, the people, and the collective. So one of our objectives has been, and I think we may just actually get it operational this year, is providing people the ability to get out there and test what's in the supply chain and report it publicly. So this was something I was hoping to do with this meter in this calendar year 2023. Last fall, we were sort of talking strategically where we at, what we're going to do, can we mass produce these things and set them out to people. My fantasy was you get 10 people in Worcester that each go shopping in a different grocery store. One person goes to Whole Foods, one person goes to Trader Joe's, one person goes to, I don't know, the co-op, food, farmers, farm stand, whatever it is. Big Y, I don't know what all the stores are in Worcester, but if you got 10 people that each are, going to be a little bit of an activist, a little radical, a little bit of a scientist, whatever your grocery store is, you spend 15 minutes in it every week to do some radical political action, which is you flash some light with this bag of carrots, that bag of carrots, that bag of carrots, that bag of carrots, and you upload that data into the cloud. And then you do the potatoes, and then you do the peppers, and you do the apples, and collectively you assess the supply chain. And everybody in town now knows where the best stuff is this week if they want to. And so that was our strategy. And I don't think this is fit for it. Right now I'm looking at infrared refractometers. So a refractometer, people don't even know what bricks Bricks is a sort of a well understood, accepted technique. And generally, I would say it's the best way we have yet for testing nutrient density, if you want a number. There's no calibration for bricks, like we can't say why 12 bricks on a carrot is better than 10 bricks on a carrot, like nobody's done the science, but it's out there and understood. And we do have bricks refractometers that are infrared, which means they're non-invasive. You don't have to squish something to get juice out of it, you can get a reading with a flash of light. So, yeah, one solution to the strategy is to build the momentum from the bottom up and empower people to, collectively engage and to share openly. So even though we don't have a nutrient density standard yet, we're building a web of people globally who are doing their data assessment and sharing with each other. We should be able to find patterns like we found in the past, which is, one of them, for instance, oftentimes, like I said, Whole Foods quality is not as high as at Walmart. Imagine that just for a second. Like, why? Because they both buy from the same farms. Because Whole Foods' supply chain is longer than Walmart's supply chain. It takes 5 days from pick to shelf for Walmart and 9 days from pick to shelf for Whole Foods. They're sourcing from the same farms.
That seems scandalous.
It's
Right? A lot of these things are.
When Whole Foods is like, when they want you to think of them as higher quality. Everybody knows that fresher is part of higher quality, so. Yeah.
So I can't say in any specific case, any specific crop, we can just say on the 80 or 90 things that have been looked at, like the majority with those two in line has Walmart looking better than Whole Foods. So can we do a real-time update every week for your bioregion? How many people would be willing to engage as a citizen scientist, as a political food activist in this? They're already going shopping. So that's one solution to it. The issue of pushback. The other solution is, the fact that the slow build around this. We've been working on this for years, and right now I'm getting inbound questions from Whole Foods, from Walmart, from General Mills, from lots of big companies, not just researchers and nutritional people, but big food companies are also like, they know this is coming down the pike. Who was it? Campbell's recently. So yeah, Hormel, not small companies, right? And they all know this is coming somehow, somewhere. They don't know exactly what's happening. They don't know when to get involved, quite how. But what we've been saying is, better to find out now the nature of your supply chain and ensure it's better than your competitors. Because when the meters come out, you're going to look good if your stuff is better, and you're going to look bad if it's worse.
35 million. That's what you should be saying.
I was talking to the Whole Foods, like they've got a foundation and they've got like the company side. I talked to people from both sides before Christmas, and they're like, okay, we're gonna. The only question is how we engage. And they're like, we've got a vertically integrated beef. Like we, raise the beef and sell the beef and we slaughter the beef, and like maybe we should focus on our beef vertical. Because that's what we're doing right now. So, strategically for companies, it's about making money. So if you're giving them an opportunity to make more money, then all of a sudden it's not a bunch of companies all against you. They're competing with each other, and it's a bandwagon effect. So I don't know how it's going to play.
But just a short follow-up question. I think that what you meant by the first part of your answer was that if the science is open source, then when it comes out, it will be available to and probably known by a whole bunch of people doing science at universities.
Yeah.
And anybody can go, like with a peer-reviewed paper, anybody can say,
Everything's
oh,
gonna be peer-reviewed.
I'll run the same test they did on their data and see if I come up with the same end. And that's how science works, right?
That's it. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how we're doing it. It's publishing everything peer review, open literature.
Okay.
So. No question.
Very confused.
Okay.
So I apologize.
Sometimes
Go
sciencey
back.
things are
Yeah.
really, not intuitive.
I would really appreciate a clear definition of nutrient density. Because I feel like if you don't have that definition, too much uncertainty.
That's the point, because we don't know what it is.
Um,
We think it correlates with flavor and aroma and shelf life and human health and pest and disease resistance and, better soil function.
So I feel that has been problematic. with basing anticipation of having a tool to tell the consumer that one kind is not neutral. And I guess I'm circling back to the original description as to why you got into this, was you can't make a living being a farmer. And so I thought what this project was trying to accomplish in part was to demonstrate to the consumer that if they had a choice,
Yep.
they should choose food grown by people who are nurturing the land, keeping the soil healthy and such, so
Yeah.
that their food is more nutrient and can be shown with
Yes.
some kind of tool. And that doesn't.
I
that
think you're
doesn't-
totally, I think we're, so,
And then the other question I have is, I feel like I would like to see some nutritionists, and maybe they are on your
Yeah.
team. Because there's a whole business now of fake meat.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that the people that develop fake meat must have been thinking about analyzing nutrient density. The answer is no.
oh, I've been talking to those guys.
So how does the composition of, how would you characterize the nutrient density of fake meat with the beef that you're
Yeah.
now analyzing, which is all natural, I guess, or
It's all
not
beef.
fake?
We have done some fake meat. So we do actually have a data set. If we're looking at 800 compounds, there's a lot of compounds there. And it's, I mean, you can, like, the grass fed versus the CAFO fed versus the beautiful polyculture, raisin fed. You can, I mean, there's a continuum there, but they're all the same basic compounds. The fake meat is just like, it's a bunch of different, it's just not meat. There's a bunch of things in it that just are not in meat.
But is it nutrient dense?
Um,
I'm not sure what that means.
So what is nutrient density? So I would suggest, back to the very beginning of the conversation, with our instinct and intuition and things like that, it seems like we are wired with our nose and our tongue to discern what's good for us and what's not. And so if you've eaten a carrot that tastes like a carrot, you're likely to want to finish it. And if you eat a carrot that tastes bitter or soapy, you're likely not to want to finish it. So that's your inbuilt nutrient monitoring system telling you what's good, what's not. A peach off of a tree that's ripe, like dripping down your chin, your body says, I'm gonna have another bite of that. A peach off the grocery store shelf that's hard and pulpy, hard and then pulpy, right? Your body's gonna say, I don't want any more of that. So there is something there. And what I'm saying is, there is no database that I'm aware of, which can confidently say, this is the difference between those things. And so until we have built that database and populated it to be able to say categorically, this is the difference, it's in the peer reviewed literature, we should not be engineering meters to go out and give to people, which is what we're doing.
Right.
We're saying, this was proof of concept. Is it possible to build a meter that is at a consumer price point that you can flash a light at a carrot and at wheat and at zucchini and get readings back about something? Yes, it is possible. So that was the first thing. When we started this project, people thought that, scientists, that nutrients don't vary, maybe more than 5 or 10%. That's mostly just genetics. And they said it's impossible to build a handheld, consumer price ray gun to assess things. That's like not possible. These were the things we were struggling with in 2017 when we started this project. Now it's like, okay, yes, yeah, we kind of understand this is possible and variation is significant. And so now we're like, okay, great. It's possible to build a meter. We're not going to work on one until we know what nutrient density is. To your very correct point. Because we shouldn't be going out there telling people buy this, don't buy that, until we know what good and bad are.
So 2 points too, I think there are reports that people who eat the fake meat, they report that it tastes just like.
Mhm.
So even though meat, but the people aren't having that bad peach experience.
What I've heard from people who've eaten fake meat, I've never had, so I can't speak to it, but I was at a conference somewhere recently, and a guy was talking about, it's like, my wife and I, we were eating that, we thought we're eating the fake meat, and like, we started to feel like really bad every morning after we ate it. Like, we connected the days that we ate that for dinner with the next morning, something in our gut that didn't feel right. And so that's what really matters, is how your body responds to it, because you can put flavorings and seasonings into things to make them desirable.
So here, I think there's some science. So
You-
here's the study I would recommend. Get people that are eating that get meat. Because now you have to come up with a composition. Hypothesis that it's not the same. And people that are eating these good kinds of meat.
Mhm.
Get actual human beings and do a controlled experiment of how you have to figure out exactly what the independent variables are going to be, what you're going to measure.
Yeah.
And that, I think, would tend to support, I think, their hypothesis that people know what they know. I think scientifically, based on anecdotal reports, it's a little more challenging to be persuasive.
So I would say, if you want to do the study, I mean, we have, we're a small organization with a big appetite, and so there's all kinds of wonderful things we could do. Convincing people fake meat is bad is not central to my objective, right? My central objective is to define.
You would design a study.
Yeah.
You know, and
Somebody could.
testing how good fake meat is.
We're doing it right now with what we think is good meat, what we think is bad meat, and we're doing human health trials, and we're doing inflammation markers. We're doing that exactly. We're doing, these people eat this steak, these people eat that steak, and then 3 hours later, repeat. We take a blood test, and we see which inflammation markers are. So we are engaging in that, like, in short term, like, inflammation goes up, we think is a bad thing. Inflammation goes down, we think is a good thing, right? That's a fairly safe statement in the medical community right now. And so that's what we're seeing. The inflammation goes down when you eat a beef. Beef looks like it's good. When it goes up when you eat beef, it's not like it's good. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I get what you're saying about having a definition for nutrient dense.
Yeah.
But, and maybe I missed this because I came in a little bit later, but you designed the ray gun to measure something and prove that it measures some kind of nutrient density, right?
Elements and a few compounds, polyphenols, antioxidants.
Okay.
6 different elements. This is calorie.
Because it sounds a little, I mean, to say that then we have to define nutrient density, you've already defined it in a sense by making that machine measure, or at least, and that's a valuable place to start, I would think, and say, look, I can't tell you what nutrient density is. That could be a moving target. It might be more important for some person to get, X, Y, Z. My ray gun machine measures these aspects.
Measures polyphenols.
Yeah.
It's not good enough.
But it's a start. It's a valuable start. And it's also.
It's a completion of proof of concept. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it is possible. But do I want to go out to the planet manufacturing thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of instruments that are calibrated to polyphenols? No.
But who's going to decide ultimately what nutrient density means?
This is exactly the point of this presentation, is to open it up and to say who wants to be involved in this process. So, I mean, strategically, it's got to be people who are specialists in a suite of different fields. She said nutritionists, agronomists, medical doctors, right? So we're bringing in, this is foundationally how we're doing it. We, the BFA, are not deciding what nutrient density is.
Right.
We're building a database, we're designing an experiment, we're populating the database, and then we're handing it over to people who have the ability to intelligently make these kind of decisions. So that's the process as envisioned.
And you're collecting raw data. They can decide, well, we want more biphenol. What's the, not biphenol,
Polyphenol,
polyphenol.
terpenoid, alkaloids, we can use all kinds of things.
You just say that and you say, fine, I got that data. You can redefine what's important.
We're doing 800 compounds, so most people don't even know what 85% of them are.
Yeah.
I mean, we're, the level of depth we're going into right now with beef is like not been done by anybody anywhere on the planet we've been able to find. Like this level of, it's called metabolomics. Like looking at this many compounds and this many samples from this broad range of environmental conditions, it's absolutely novel. It's completely has not been done. And the researchers at the universities that are aware of it are like, hey, can I get my hands on the data? Hey, can we do some mitochondrial work? Like there's, like
Yeah.
this kind of data set is not normal
Yeah.
for scientists. And so the ones that are open-minded are very excited about collaborating. I got people in the National Academy of Science, they're like asking me to be like reporting to them. You know, it's like, it's a bit, yeah,
I
almost.
mean, well, from a practical matter, I'll say the last thing. But from a practical matter, we're not gonna solve the question of what's nutrient dense. I mean, we're gonna be arguing over that for the next 20, 30 years, I would guess.
I think if we pull it off, maybe you missed what I said before about how we're doing it, but for $1 million, you can have a pretty damn good working definition.
Well, hold on, what about, so what is nutrition?
Yeah.
But then you also have the degree of variability of, okay, you just define nutrient density. But, and I think Fred Provenza's book,
Yeah.
Nourishment, points out that each one of us
Is unique.
is unique
Yeah.
and probably does require a different nutrient spectrum.
Mhm. Which is
So,
why some people say, I want to eat beef right now. and Some people
Right.
say, I want to eat carrots right now. Because you're an animal and you know what it is that you're hungry for. You've been eating too much protein recently, you need some grains or whatever. God, I want some salad right now. It's springtime.
so then
and I'm
we've
just
got that level of
craving salad.
variability.
Well, so that's the thing is, from my perspective, I'm not gonna say you should eat this or should eat that.
Right,
I'm gonna say, if you're gonna eat meat,
here it is.
this is better, this is worse.
Yeah.
If you're gonna eat wheat, this is better, this is worse. If you're gonna drink milk, this is better, this is worse. Right? We can say some things pretty categorically, like high levels of toxins and imbalanced biochemistry in milk is not gonna be good for some people and bad for other people,
Correct.
right? Or in rice. Like that biochemical imbalance, that toxin load is not gonna be good for anybody. So it's not about, I mean,
We're not gonna get it all right.
sure, there's decades of work ahead of us. But I think if we focus on this and go straight to the middle and say, you know, there's no judgment about whether you're a vegan or whether you're a carnivore or anything else. You know, this soy looks like a healthy thing. This soy looks totally perverse, right? So, yeah, oh, time. I think he was in line with it. It's fine. We got time.
The time between harvest and consumption has as much importance on the nutrient density or the quality of this. Then how does an apple that's harvested in October and eaten in May, or a potato that's harvested in October and eaten whatever, however months afterwards, how do they, no matter how they were raised, how much depletion is there?
So, yeah, so it's a very interesting dynamic where it looks like the lower the level of compounds is when you pick, the faster it degrades. The higher the level of compounds is when you pick, the slower it degrades. So when you got something that's really biochemically complex, John's one talking about this actually with, I think it was cobalt and I can't remember what the compound was. It's ethylene. Ethylene is an incomplete compound. When you get enough cobalt in the plant, then that ethylene is complex than something else, and things don't rot so fast. So when you get that high level of biochemical complexity, they've never had a winter squash that sat for 8, 10, 12 months, right? Some squashes are rotten after 6 weeks, right? So what's the baseline? How good was it to start? Like, means it'll degrade slowly, right? If it's just junky to start. So that's what Whole Foods and Walmart are both buying, the conventional, poorly grown, organic, that are at the 10th percentile when they get picked. So one's at 8 and one's at 6 when they hit the shelf, 5 days later or 9 days later. But they were junk to begin with. So yeah, it's not linear. Certainly, I mean, a lot of these apples that are picked, that are grown conventionally, that are saved in storage, they don't have a lot of flavor. They may be crisp. They sometimes are sweet, but do they taste like the flavor of apples? It's the flavor is the thing. is the,
Sugar can be hybridized.
the sugar is a simple compound. The flavor is the complex compound, the nutritional compound is flavor. And that's one of the things our tongues have been tricked about is, to focus on sweet. In nature, when you've got sweet, you got a lot of other things going on there.
I just wanted to point out, it seems so cool how your lack of bias in your approach is so important to the project and the success. Because you're not saying one method is better than the other, you're trying to find a way to decide that. And by having no bias, or trying to have no bias, it allows for everybody to have a different perspective, like you pointed out. And then it's amazing to me how we only really understand 10% of the microbiology of the soil, really.
Not
Are we
even,
there yet?
not even
Maybe
10%.
I was just saying we were-
We know more about Mars than we do about the soil
Yeah,
under
right.
our feet.
Right, and then so to then bring in a tool that can even use the aspect of time. And which is such an important factor, like the time that from pick to, and even and all the space in between, like how was it in the sun, was it in the shade, there's so many factors that this tool could.
I think we can revolutionize a lot. I mean, how about picking things right? Right, and you pick up tomato that wasn't ripe, let it sit for a while, and it'll turn a little bit reddish. Right, that's what the tomatoes are that are on the shelf in the grocery store. They're not picked ripe. They may end up looking red. But if you ever picked a tomato that wasn't ripe and let it sit, you see it turn and know what it tastes like. Like that's why tomatoes in the grocery store don't taste good, because you can't really pick a tomato ripe and ship it 1,000 miles. Right? Doesn't work. So all of a sudden, these incentives for people that are more local, that are picking ripe and in season and, shorter food miles. I mean, we have a visceral, nutritional self-interest for those things, right? You said, oh, it's $3.50 at the farm stand or the farmer's market and $2.50 at the grocery store. I should go to the grocery store. Well, but this one is 5x more nutritious than that. So do your math. So anyway, to the point about, there was something else about not being biased. I was going to make some response, but I can't remember what it was. Yeah.
Couple of things. One is, it seems like nutrient density is ideally some kind of combination of nutrient quantity per pound and nutrient balance.
Exactly.
And
Levels
that
and ratios.
balance part is
Levels and
really hard to
ratios.
hit.
Yeah.
And one thing that makes me, two things that make me wonder about are, number one, is there, and this can't be answered now, is there a natural nutrient balance for any given crop? If it's given the complete smorgasbord, everything at once, it has the same instinct to take up what it needs
Yes.
that we do. And it's different crops will pick it up in different ways. Each one
Yes.
has its own ideal balance.
That's exactly our hypothesis. That's the hypothesis we're working to
Yeah.
see if it's true or not. Yeah.
And then you get to the point of saying, okay, with this you can measure this nutrient has a certain nutrient density in the simple sense of this is how much nutrient this nutrient there is per pound. But that says nothing about the balance.
Yeah.
When you got the.
So I think it's the balance that we're talking about. And we're just saying, there's going to be a continuum of more balanced. Obviously there's concentrations, but also balance within those concentrations.
Well, and the other part is we've built a food system right now that's based on yield and how it fits in a box,
volume
not,
processing. Yeah.
not nutrition.
So I remember what I was going to say to your point about not being dogmatic. So the way we're designing it is the farmer sends in a lot of data about what they did. And so my thought is, like, we're going to find that this fertility program works a lot better. Like, what ideally, like the things that work are going to be verified and then freely disseminated. So like people right now have to trust a consultant, they have to trust their purchasing, their university agronomists, they have to,
the banker was giving them their operating loan in the springtime, like you could only use these seeds and only use these products. Like, if we actually do the data collection and we figure out which management practices, which fertility programs correlate with superior quality, then farmers can have that autonomous access. So whoever's got good products is gonna make a lot of money. Whoever's got junk is not. And to the point of pushback, I was just out in Oregon a couple days ago with a guy who's doing a really good job consulting. And he was like, the big chemical companies have been going in and buying like tanks of liquid fish from that I'm buying, like he's distributing like among other things. He's got these 300 gallon tons of liquid fish. And so the chemical companies have been going and buying it from the place he buys it from and selling it to his farmers at a lower price, like losing money on it, going out of their way to sort of screw him in various different ways, because all of their chemical companies' old customers, those farmers, are now moving over to him. Because what's going on is, after a few years in the space, like these guys got crops are doing better. They don't have pest pressure, they don't have disease pressure, their yields are higher. And so the chemical companies that were selling these products are saying, this guy's a competitor. How can we screw with him? So yeah, but we want to open this up. So whoever's got the good stuff, it's shown. Does compost tea work or not? Let's see. Or how powerful are foliar sprays? I don't know. Which inoculants are the best ones? Let's see. Right? We all sort of kind of think these things are good, but we don't really actually have a framework for independently discerning. So yeah, I get totally excited by it. Feels kind of like I'm just like, I don't know, fighting everybody at once or something. Are you in line with truth? Good. You're probably going to benefit from this process. Are you not? Well, you got an opportunity, because not everybody knows yet what the answers are. You can start changing your actions. Yeah.
It seems to me one more wild part, and it's getting wilder.
Yeah.
It's gonna be weather.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like, I'm sure rain at different times of the year has a different effect on nutrient, I would assume, nutrient absorption.
Well, overall system function, right? I mean, the more soil health you've got, the more well you can do in drought and flood. So systemically, bring on the cataclysm, right? The more extremes we have, the more people have to function well. This is why biodynamic is so big in Australia and permaculture and stuff like that, is because they live in an extraordinarily fertile environment. Like, they've been dealing with this climate stuff for decades. And so they've had to modulate their practices, because otherwise they couldn't get a crop. So what is it? 90% of the organic acres too, or just biodynamic acres on the planet are in Australia. Massive percent.
90% of what?
I'm not sure if it's biodynamic or organic acreage. Acreage, production of acreage on the planet is in Australia. Because
Sandbar, right?
it's a desert.
Yeah.
But when the white people came, you know this data? When white people came, average of 10 to 12% organic matter across the continent. They couldn't ride their horses across because it was too spongy. Their horses' hooves were digging into the ground. Right? This is what is it called? It's a book. I can't remember the book. Yeah, original historical records of like when the white people came and said this is what was going on here. The indigenous people that have been managing there for 60,000 years. You know what the history of Australia? 60,000 years. You do the archaeology, like they actually no war. Interesting. They would think that human nature is aggressive and competitive and stuff like that. We've got an example of a continent where for 60,000 years people were engaging in very peaceful, synergistic, collaborative, culture, and had maintained soil carbon levels above 10% across the entire continent. Right? We got to get some perspective about who we are and what's possible. We've got models. We've got, if we are willing to learn, we're willing to learn and see what's out there. The Great Estate, I think is the name of that book. The Great Estate, and that's where it's documented the organic matter levels in Australia. Really massive. And now, of course, it's a desert because of how the white people's cultural practices have abused the ecosystem.
In 300 years.
Less than that. I think it's less than that. I don't think they came over very. Not sure what it is. It was only 800 or something. All right. Are we, is that 4 o'clock? I mean, we're
It
done?
looks like it's 4 o'clock. Yeah.
Is that clock right?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And How,
No other,
no other questions?
no, no, yep, no other questions out there.
All right.
So thank you, Dan.